All right, guys, I'm gonna do another video rather than a live stream because I'm kind of working here. But I kind of wanted to address some of the topics and how we're approaching them, in particular context of coaching in the U.S. and the culture here. And some of the things that people are saying out there to fix it, but without the culture, without the sort of baseline understanding of what and why other people are doing the training, the tactics, the preparation, the way they're doing it, because those things have to fit together, right? And so if you take any piece of information in isolation, you go over here, go to the English about physical preparation and ball mastery, and then you go to the Brazilians about fluid play, and you go to the Catalans about positional play, and then you start trying to break down Man City's decisions and tactics, and it doesn't fit together, right? You just can't do everything. And culture, or more specifically game model analysis, right, comes up with a solution specific to your situation, right? And so here in the United States, we've inherited English and German football, right? In conditions that aren't necessarily conducive to that, right? Like, we don't play in mud, we don't play in the rain, we don't play in the winter, we don't play on, well, we do play on tall grass sometimes, right? But increasingly more on artificial grass, on dry, in the heat, in July, right? That's a different game than German and English football, understandably so, right? So you still get coaches that say, don't step on the ball, right? Why? Because they just say it because that's what they were taught, right? And stepping the ball and trying to move the ball in the wet, in the mud, may not work, right? But if you're playing on artificial turf and it's dry, stepping on the ball does two things for you. One, it allows you to get your head up, it settles the ball, and you can turn easily. So it buys you some time, and it maybe even forces you into tactical tempo, like la pausa, the pause, right? So the baseline, how you train, what techniques you use, has to fit together with your tactical map, right? And that has to do with the rules, right? So some of these rule changes, the younger generation may not be aware of it, but back in the day, you used to be able to pass back to the goalkeeper, right? And then the goalkeeper would pick it up with the hands and launch it. So going long, first and second balls, third balls, right, is a thing, right? Because if you weren't strong technically, you were passing back the goalkeeper and launching the ball. Or the short build out, the ball used to have to leave the 18 on the goal kick. Not anymore, right? And so those things change the game. Things change the game to fit the culture of, say, Brazilians, Uruguayans, Argentinians, and Spain, which have been the countries that are winning now. Portugal even, right? So it's somewhat of a different game. And then, there's an adaptation, right? So one of the adaptations is dispositional play, to make the field more narrow, to make the formation more narrow and more compact, right? But, then there's going to be adaptations to that in terms of, what Ajax and Fluminense are doing now in terms of not having set positions and just playing by principles and rotating players, right? Making the engagement of the press more difficult, right? The sort of man-to-man pressing, gegenpressing, is going to be much more difficult in the future, right? So all that to say is how you train dictates your technique dictates your tactics dictate your strategy. And that's what professionalism is. So my book, The Blueprint, although I want to talk about In-cite or In-cite today in terms of the training, but and I'll leave a link in the description to the Amazon site where you can buy the book. But that's to say that how you train, if you train for ball mastery and positional play, right, you're just going to stand still in your triangle and receive the ball and have longer passing lanes and fewer automations and hold your position. If that's how you're going to play, then yeah, what happens is when you go to practice, everyone gets a ball. One ball, one player, and your model of development is linear, right? The faster I get, the more touches I get in the ball, the better I'm going to be. The data does not back that up at all, right? At some point, maybe the more technical and better player you are, the worse the team does. From a collective and developmental standpoint. Maybe the faster you are, the worse the team does. These things are just not linear at all. But it's very easy to coach. And it looks organized if you're trying to deliver a product at a price. So what this book is going to say is that soccer is based on principles. And what you're trying to develop is not a sense of what a position is and what a role is in a position. What you're trying to develop is an ability to read a game by feel, because feel will be a precursor to perception. So you have to read a defense. Is it a zone? Is it a mixed zone? Is it a press? Is it a gegenpress? What's the intensity? You have to feel the intensity, right? If you're playing a high line, you have to progress the high line to the point where you feel uncomfortable. And right at that point is where you should be. So you create, the goal of training is to create a feel map of the game. So you kind of have to tell them, like, these are the things you're looking for. And when you're looking for these things, for instance, the angle on the run towards the first post, right? A lot of American players will attack the big space on the outside. They'll drive towards the outside, and then they don't practice receiving the ball running towards the sideline. It's not optimal. Receiving the ball running towards the sideline is not optimal, but if you're going to do it all the time, you got to practice it, right? A lot of times they receive the ball vertically through the channel, right? The ball's not moving diagonally to the front foot. So, so for instance, if you want the ball to move the diagonal, you have to coach pass to the first shortest available front foot. American players won't do that, right? They don't think that passing the front foot, right, even 2 or 3 yards changes the orientation of the movement pattern of the ball. So what Americans are looking for is breaking lines, moving the ball down the field, right? They're not worried about the body orientation and passing the front foot. And so they end up running perpendicular to the sideline or up and down as opposed to on the diagonal, showing a front foot. But why would they? Because when they train, they don't train the half turn with a front foot showing a diagonal ball and how to receive it, and then how to pivot, whether it's like left foot, right foot turn, or pivot on the ball. So if you don't practice those mechanics, and then you don't play another sport where, for instance, hockey, where pivots are very important, because the momentum of your skates carry you forwards. You have to be able to, in order to reverse, you need to be able to pivot, right? Or basketball, right? In order to get through a tight space, once you can't dribble anymore, you got to make your body small and step through the guard. Pivot around. Look for help. As soon as the player in basketball picks up the ball, then there's help. Help has to come, right? So what you're missing is again, the training elements that combine to produce the tactics, and the tactics that produce the strategy. So if you train positional play from a formation, then what you're trying to do is optimize your reception of the ball. I'm trying to put myself into space, right? Whether or not that space is a press trap or not, you don't particularly care. You're just making it easy on you to receive the ball, right? Well, soccer is not that game. Soccer is about making it easy on your teammate to get you the ball. So, for instance, you have to practice moving towards the ball and maybe being jammed by the ball into your feet. So that's a completely different first touch than open your hip and use your instep. Even if you bounce and be plyometric, the way the English do it or the Germans do it, you bounce as you receive the ball with the instep of the foot. Even that's not going to settle the ball fast enough if you have to run towards the ball. It's going to bounce off your foot. And that's what's happening in the games, folks. The technique is just not there. And it's not a secret, right? Bielsa has cataloged all the technique in the world, right? He says the only time you use your instep the way the Germans and the English do, whether it's passing or receiving, is when it's obvious and easy. You can watch Messi, obviously a protege at some point of Bielsa. You can watch Messi step on the ball and wedge it and then turn, right? And then you see these people on the YouTubes saying never step on the ball. So just from the one thing that the analytics tells you is we're in big trouble, because not only do we not have an understanding of the game, right? Or we have a flawed understanding of the game. But on top of that understanding, you have to have a sort of psychological, psychometric, emotional feeling map of the game to understand what's going to happen next. You can't be thinking through what's going to happen next. You have to feel it. And when you have a certain feeling, you execute a certain way, right? So if a player is pressing into me, right, the way the Argentinians do is they turn their back to the player and roll them. If they get blocked, they do la pelopina. They spin back the other way onto the left foot, right? So we don't practice spinning the roulette, like Zidane's roulette, spinning onto the left foot and then driving on the left foot. We always if we spin onto the left foot, we're always trying to come back to the right side. So footedness, the feeling, when do I feel to use what foot? It's all got to be developed in training. The training has got to be about footedness, right? So like the Japanese do, right, then left, then right, then left. And there's no like, okay, we're doing it right, okay, we're doing it left. It's together, right? Do the move, spin on your right foot. Do the move, spin on your left foot. Do the move, halfway through the move, use your left foot. Halfway through the move, left to right, right to left. And then the plyometrics, the bands, everything, the foot coordination is done off the ball, right and left. So they build that coordination and agility, right and left. And then on the ball, right and left. And then combined with a feel, right? So there's some kind of read or feel that dictates how the techniques are then executed. And then what the tactical significance of that is. What's going to happen next, right? Am I receiving the ball on my back foot? Am I receiving the ball on my front foot? And then, you know, people saying we'll never receive the ball on the downfield foot. I'm gonna call it downfield foot because at this point, back foot, front foot has been so just thoroughly confused. So when you talk about how you train and the technique, just do something that's simple and easy to understand. Is the foot downfield? Is the foot upfield? The upfield foot is a front foot, right? The downfield foot is a back foot. Simple, right? No confusion. When you talk about a diagonal pass, it's not the angle of the pass. It's the fact that you're trying to find the closest front foot. And so you got to train receiving the ball in motion on the close, in tight, right? Like Corinthians in Brazil, right? Where the players are running as hard as he can to support the ball carrier, and the guy in La Pausa, the guy who has the ball, just flicks the ball up, and the player comes in underneath, takes the ball on the front foot. It's a tiny, 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 tight space pass, almost like a pick and roll in basketball. Like when you start training these things, you start realizing, oh, there's a lot more to the game than positional play, right? And you can see where Man City is today, right? So a couple years ago, they brought in Juan Leo, right? And his big thing is dispositional play. What are the conditions that allow for exceptions, expanding the options away from positional play? Where in the game and why in the game are you positional? Where in the game and why in the game are you fluid or dispositional? Dispositional mean, the numbers, where the numbers are and what their shape is on the ball, right? And then maybe some people are off the ball. And so just that concept alone, who's on the ball, who's supporting, who's off the ball, who's giving structure, who's giving support, and who's responsible for the ball, right? Just that concept alone has got to be trained. Because the people who are on the ball might have a disposition that's very, very small. And if it's 4, 5, or 3, there's certain things like if it's 3 and you can't build what's called a line of control, then you can't reorganize fast enough to come back and build a line of control to support the ball, then you got to do what's called a ladder. You got to build a line of penetration. And the English will never have 3 players in a row within each other's cover shadow. They always say, when that happens, move out. Well, the Brazilians will go pass here and flick without looking. So, but the technique has to be trained first. How to receive the ball and flick with the first touch, or receive through the ball and use the ground to settle as a second touch, right? Or step on the ball and wedge and pivot, right? Or do the half turn, left, right, left foot touch, front foot, right foot, sweep around, back foot. Like those techniques are what drives the tactical understanding. And those technical profiles are what coaches are going to be looking for in the future formations, if there even is such a thing as a future formation, right? Because at this point, players are going to be rotating fluidly all over the place, clearly, right? So you have to build your tactical profile accordingly. Anyway, In-cite, In-C, right? We'll talk about the blueprint, more practical application of it later, but the game has a psychometric map. It's triggered by feeling. The purpose of training is to not only trigger the feelings and to see the triggers, perceptual triggers, feeling triggers, right? That have automated techniques behind them. So you're always one step ahead. That's the idea. Get the book, put it in the description. Thanks, guys.